Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and today I've got a very cool training, a simple yet powerful macro as well as sheet where we're going to be going over vertical tab design. So stay tuned, it's going to be an awesome training. Great, let's get started. All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how we can combine a lot of different information on an Excel sheet and show that information in a very simple vertical tab design. And now if you remember back, if you haven't seen it yet, we did go over a similar design, but that was in horizontal tab. We did have a horizontal which looked a lot like this. Okay, so we did a horizontal tab where we had tabs, and if you haven't seen that yet, feel free to go back and take a look at that. It's one of our earliest episodes. But today we're going to be going over vertical tab design, and I think you're really going to love it because it's even easier than the horizontal tab. And we do this with just a tiny bit of code and some conditional formatting. All right, let's get started and show you how we do this exactly. Well, the first thing to create our menu is all we basically do is we color 4 different cells and we put our menu in here. And we assign just some formatting on that, some basic formatting. And then in order to get this effect when we click, we assign conditional formatting. Just as we've done in previous, when we select a row, we assign that row to a specific field using VBA, and I'll go over that with you in a minute. But basically what the code will tell you is if we select any particular cell between E5 and E8, then what I want to happen is I want to put whatever row we selected right here, okay, into B3. So when we select E7, it's going to put 7. When we select E8, it's going to put 8. I want that row number right here because I'm going to use this in the conditional formatting. Okay, and in the conditional formatting, let's go ahead and take a look at that. We'll select one of the cells, Home, Conditional Formatting, and Manage Rules. And we only have one rule right here. And the rules are simply if B3 equals the row, B3 equals row. That's it. That's it for the row, okay? And in the formatting, what I've done is I've just given it a fade, okay? And I've given it a fade from a darker blue to a lighter blue. And this lighter blue, right, I want to match that to the background screen color, okay? So that was kind of important. When we go into the fill effects, I chose a darker blue right here, and then the second effect would be that lighter blue, and that lighter blue is the same as the background color because I want that one to blend in. Okay, I want that blend effect. And then all I've done as well is go ahead and change the font color. You see our normal font color is white and bold, right? So I've gone ahead and made it regular, and I just used this dark blue. You can use whatever you want. So basically that's it. Okay, so that means when a user selects on a particular cell within that range, the row number is placed here in B3, and then the conditional formatting is used. And you'll see how you get that nice blend effect. Okay, so remember the actual format. Let's go ahead and the actual format. Okay, the actual formatting of this cell, right, is this dark blue to light blue. That is the actual format, okay? And then the font color is a bold and it's white, okay? The font color is white. That is the format, okay? The conditional formatting applies the opposite, okay? The opposite, where it has the conditional applies the dark font with the lighter background. So that is how we obtain that contrast to make it look like a selectable menu, and then it blends in, okay? So that's how we do it. Now, how do we get this row number into cell B3? And you may remember some of my videos. We'll go over that once again. We do that through VBA. And to get to the VBA model, we can go through several options. Under the Developers tab, we can click Visual Basic. We can also click Alt F11, and if you don't have that Developers tab available to you, you can go into the Options and then click the Customize ribbon, and then make sure you've selected the Developers tab here. That will get it here. And here we go, Alt F11 we go, and here is the Developers tab, and we use just a little bit of on sheet meaning on sheet 1. Okay, this is code. This is off sheet code. Okay, this is on sheet code. Okay, on sheet code, that means when we do something on the sheet, we want something else to happen. Okay, now what do we want to happen? Well, what are we doing? We're selecting. We're not making any changes. We're selecting. Okay, so we want something to happen when we select a cell. We're not going to make a change. Okay, so in that case, we're going to use what's called selection change. That means when we change a selection, we want something to happen. But we don't want something to happen every time we make a selection change to any cell. We only want something to happen when we select a small range of cells. And in this case, our range is simply E5 through E8. So when we make a change to any of these 4 cells, then we want something to happen. Okay? So this line of code does that. If not intersect target range E5 through E8 is nothing. And this double negative not and nothing cancel each other out. So basically what it's saying is if we make a change to a selection change to E5 through 8, then we want something to happen. Now notice this line of code there. Okay, this is important because if we select a lot of cells, it's going to throw a bug. Okay, if I comment that out, in other words, if I make this hidden, right, and then I select a lot of cells in that, it's going to throw a bug. Okay, it says cannot load, the macro may not be available, so it's going to give us a problem there. Okay, so we definitely don't want that to happen, and so that's why we say if target count, that means if we've selected a lot of cells, we want to make sure that we do use it. So that means if the user selects more than one cell, then please exit. Okay, so we want to make sure that is enabled. This is very, very important for you, because anytime the user selects a lot of highlights a lot of cells, it often causes a bug. So that's a very easy way to get rid of that. Next up, we want B3 equals target row. Now look in here. Now when we use on sheet macros, we don't need to define the sheet 1 dot range. You'll see sheet 1 a lot, but that's only when we use off sheet macros, right? Since we're actually working on sheet 1, we know VBA knows what sheet we're on, so we don't need to define the sheet further. Range B3, that is sufficient because we know what sheet, VBA knows what sheet we're referring to. And then equals the target dot row. Okay, if we were going to put target column, right, it would list the column. It would list the column that we're on. Okay, we want the row in this case. So that's it. That's how this one line of code places that column right in B3. And then the next is actually going to run our macros. Okay, run our macros, and I'll go over that in just a little bit. Okay, so now we know how we've created this menu. Okay, but now how do we create all of the different data when we select it? And that's actually quite simple. If you notice up here at the top, you'll see these columns, they're all changing, right? Okay, so we're actually using different columns. And if we were to unhide that, let's go ahead and unhide those so you can see what's going on under the hood. Okay, we're going to highlight those, right click and unhide so you can see what's going on here. Okay, so we have general information first. Don't worry about this. These are actually tags, so there's some hidden, there's some shown at times, so we'll go ahead and this we don't need. Okay, this is something old. I'll delete that. You don't need that, and cut that out. We don't need that. Okay, so here we have our table for our time clock data. Here we have our data for payroll, okay? And here we have our notes. So we basically have it in 4 different sections, okay? And so what we want to do is we want to create this visual effect where we have details. Now, how did we do that, okay? So basically all we're doing is we're hiding certain columns and we're showing other columns. So for general information, I am going to show G through K. I want G through K to show up. For time clock details, I want to hide everything and I only want to show columns O through S. Payroll history, X through AB, and notes, just one column AH. Okay, so basically through VBA, we're going to say, hey, I want you to hide all the columns and I want you to show different columns. Now here's another trick. Okay, you see how we have this information at the top? None of it is moving, right? Even this shape, none of that moves. And often we do get shapes that move with our columns or move or size with our columns, but in this case, we want to make sure that all the shapes on this page, this is really critical, okay, size and properties, we want to make sure that we have set this to don't move or size with cells. We want everything, regardless of what columns we're showing, we want everything to display just as we have it. Okay, so that's an important part. So that's every shape, regardless of the shape type, right? It's going to have those same properties. Move, but don't size with cells. Don't move or size with cells. Okay, so that's a really critical component of this. Now there's another one. Take a look at this. Under general information, you see we have first name Fred, and we have this title here. Okay, if we were to change this to Mike and then Smith, you'll notice that the title changes also. Employee information for Mike Smith. Okay, and that's a really great trick. And the reason we can do this is basically we have tied this particular shape to a specific cell. Okay, so whatever is in B5 is going to show up here. Okay, and so let's go ahead and take a look at B5. We will scroll on over. Oh, let me undo that. Okay, so let's expand B5 so you can see what's going on here. And in this formula, it's very simple. All I've done is it says employee information equals H6, so whatever's in H6, and then a space, and then K6. So basically it equals anything that is in H6 or K6. So that's how we obtain that effect, okay? And let's go ahead and reset that. Sometimes when you do that, sometimes when you enter it, it's going to reset the formats. So you'll want to sometimes make sure that that's been set the way you like it. So we'll go ahead and reset that the way we had it there. And let's go ahead and move up that font, and then we'll choose another nice format, maybe Cambria. That looks good. Bold and italicized. Okay, that's nice. That should be nice. So that's going to be helpful. And you see here we have moving with the size. You see how when we move the cells, those shapes don't move. That's what we want. That's the effect that we want. Okay. That's important. Now let's say you need to move everything. Okay, now that we've finished here, we can move on to this. Okay, now look how this shape changes detail every time we click on it. And how do we do that? Well, we did that with 4 different text boxes, and then we're hiding those text boxes and we're showing those text boxes. So if we unclick here, you'll see that we have 4 different text boxes. We have general info label, we have a time clock label, we have payroll label, and we have notes label. Okay, they're all here. Okay, if you move one, you'll see another one. You see they're just kind of behind themselves. But we only need to show one at a time. So our macro will basically hide all of these and then show only the one that we want. Let's go back into the VBA model so I can show you how we did that. Okay. And let's go into our tabs. I've created a module and it's called tab macros. And remember, if you want to rename your tab macros, just click on the properties and rename them. When I first started coding, I didn't know how to change the name, and I had no idea what was in each module. So you'll make sure you want to name your modules, okay, so that you can clearly see. When you have a lot of them, that's going to be really helpful. So that's how you give it a name. And now basically what I wanted to do was I want to be able to the idea is I want to do this with very limited code. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to run whatever macro regardless of whatever they click on. I only want one line, just one line. Now I could put 4 different macros here, but I want to show you how we do this with one line. One line of code will run 4 different macros. Okay, this is really helpful, especially when you have a lot of very similar macros to run. So what I did in this case is I created a macro, but what I did is the only difference between those macros is that I changed the number at the end of it. So each macro starts with show tab, and then all I did was change the number at the end of it. And this is really going to be helpful for us so that we only use one line of code. Now keep in mind that you cannot have a macro with just 3 letters and a number, because that's very similar to a cell reference. a cell reference. So if you try to run that, you may often get an error. Okay, take a look at this. Cannot run the macro show tab 4. The macro is not available. Okay, well, we know that. But let's end that, and let's go ahead and just try to run that macro so we see what happens. Let's see if it allows us to run it. Okay, it did, but keep in mind that TAB4 is also a cell reference. Okay, TAB4. Okay, it's also a cell reference. It's referring to this particular cell right here. So often we run into trouble when we refer macros to cells. So be careful with that. Make sure your macro names have a long enough name so that they don't get confused with cell references. Okay, so I've gone ahead and named it larger for you, and in this case, what we did is basically I've created 4 different macros, and I created one macro that hides everything. And that's really helpful because we really want to hide everything and then show only what we need to. So the idea is I want to hide every single one of these labels. I want to hide every one of the columns. Then I only want to show the column and show the label that pertains to the one we've clicked on. Okay, that's all we're doing in VBA. So first, with sheet 1, we're going to hide all 4 labels. Shapes, general info is visible, false. So with these 4 lines of code, I've hidden those 4 labels. And I've also hidden all, this is key, all of the columns, right? Starting at G, right, and going all the way to AH, I've hidden them all. So that hides everything. Okay, if we run that macro, let's go ahead and run that. Okay, now if you take a look, you'll see nothing's here, right? All the columns are hidden. That's not what we want, but that's a start, because now we can run only the macro we want. Okay, so now with each individual macro, we only need to show what we want to show the label that we want to show, and we need to only show the columns we want to show. So that's why every macro begins with hide all, hide all, hide all. So first we hide all, okay, then we show the label we want to show, and then we show the columns we want to call. And we do that for each one, so it's very simple. So that way when we run tab 3, you know, it's run. See, payroll history, tab 3. Then that shows X through AB. That means we want to show X through AB. You see how simple that is? So just really 2 lines of code. Show the payroll label, and then sheet 1 range X, X through AB, entire column hidden equals false. So with just 2 lines of code, we can do that, and it's quite simple. 3 if you want to include this macro here. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Now remember, each one of these macros are the same except for the last number. Okay, so now how do we click on this and run macro 2? So basically, when I click here, I want to run macro 1. When I click here, I want to run macro 2, 3, and 4. So how do I do that with 1 line of code? Well, let's go ahead back into the on-sheet macros and run. This means run a specific macro. We know each macro begins with show tab, right? We know each macro, so that is going to be common throughout every macro. And then the only difference is, right, this is 1, this is 2, right? So if this is 1, what row? This is row 5, right? But if we know we're on row 5 and we know we need to get to macro 1, all we need to do is -4. If we're on row 6 and we know we need to run macro 2, all we need to do again is subtract 4. So that's all I've done in the code. Target row -4, okay? So that runs that macro. So depending upon the target row, -4, it'll run that macro. So to run macro show tab 1, we select target row 5, -4 is 1. So that's how we can run 4 different macros with 1 line of code. Okay, it's very good, and it cuts down on your coding a lot. And I really wanted to show you not only the vertical track, but how we can run different macros with 1 line of code. And that's really helpful, especially when using dates like month numbers. We can use lots of different ways. I've used it on the scheduling, I believe, when we come to month numbers. So it's a really great trick when you're running that. Okay, and also remember another critical shape: these shapes don't move. Okay, Right click. Remember, it's very important that size and properties, these shapes don't move. They stay right in place. Okay? And don't move. And another thing, how did I get all these in exactly the same spot? Well, that's pretty easy. I'm going to select my pane, right? And then I'm going to select all of these. Okay, so they're all there, but they're just hidden, right? And then I'm going to use my selection shape here, and I'm going to highlight them all. Okay, see, they're all four highlighted. Another way to highlight them, another way is simply hold down your control and click, click, click. Okay, so that's another way. And all I'm going to do is go into Format, Align, align the center, align once again, and align the middle. That ensures that they're all exactly the same on top of each other. And then of course we can make sure they're all the same size by setting the size here as we've selected them all. So that's going to ensure that they don't move, that they're all the same size, and that it's going to look really, really streamlined. Okay, so that's a great way to do that as well. All right, so that's a great way to show a lot of data you can have, and it's also a great way because if a customer says to you, hey, I need 2 more tabs, it's so easy to add. It's simple. All you need to do is just start typing, copy down this, add a new macro, and within probably 5 minutes you can add some more information. So it's a really dynamic way of viewing a lot of data, and it's very user friendly. I'm really glad you got to see this one. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll make sure to include this in the download links below, either on a Facebook Messenger link or within your email. Thank you as always. Please do share this video and like it. Your comments and shares are always appreciated. Thank you so much.